Good Friday. So I included most of the Good Friday story in my words last Sunday, but I wanted to speak about two of the other stories that Matthew includes about that Friday and early on Saturday. So the first is about the early hours of Friday morning, and then the other one starts in the evening after Jesus dies and then continues on to early on Saturday morning. So, reading from Matthew chapter 27. Early in the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people made their plans how to have Jesus executed. So they bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate the governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse, and he returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. What is that to us? They replied. That's your responsibility. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. The chief priests picked up the coins and said, "It is against the law to put this into the treasury, since it is blood money." So they decided to use the money to buy a potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field as the Lord commanded me. As I mentioned yesterday, Matthew gives us this much more complete accounting on everything that Judas did. We see in this story that Judas wanted Jesus arrested, but not condemned to death. He apparently had no concept that that might be the consequence of his betrayal. The chief priests also seem to be unsure of the consequences of their actions. They decide that they cannot keep the money returned because it's blood money. But they didn't seem to have any reservations around giving the money to Judas or even actually sentencing Jesus to death. The story of Judas's betrayal is a moral one around the unintended consequences of our unjust actions. Judas may have felt that the Jesus movement needed to cool its tracks, but by betraying Jesus, he unintentionally caused the death of a dear friend. It's a guilt that he cannot live with. Matthew includes this story partially so that he can give us another of the ties to the Hebrew scriptures. What happened with the chief priests fulfills what Jeremiah prophesied. Last Sunday, I read the main part of the Passion narrative from Jesus' Roman trial to his crucifixion. But I'm going to pick up here with verse 55, which is just after Jesus has died and the temple shroud has been ripped in two. Many women were there, watching from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. As the evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb. The next day, the one after the preparation day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. "Sir," they said, "we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise again.' So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise, his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he has been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first." "Take a guard," Pilate answered. "Go, make the tomb as secure as you know how." So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting the guard. There are several things that will become important from these verses of Scripture. It will only be revealed to us at Easter. First, this is where Matthew tells us about the women disciples and who is comprised in their group. Second, this is where Matthew reminds the listener that Jesus had always said that he'd be raised on the third day, and that this was well known enough that the chief priests were worried that the Jesus movement would steal the body and pretend that there was some type of resurrection. Third, that Roman soldiers were set up to guard the tomb of Jesus to prevent this from happening. This is important because it sets up the fact that no one can get into the tomb without those soldiers knowing. Everything is now in place for the third day. Now we wait.